Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I had quite an excursion over the weekend. Drove about 1,200, well not me personally, 1,200 kilometers. And let me first show you some photographs I took of the sunset. And this was taken in northern Kenya, beyond 200 kilometers beyond Garissa. Political reflections. No new model of jet has recorded 2 fatal accidents in its first year until the Boeing 737 MAX 8. This is the Ethiopian airline that went down 6 minutes after taking off from Addis Ababa's Bole airport. This crash occurred little more than 4 months after the crash of Lion Air Flight 610 in Indonesia. A total of 346 people died in the 2 crashes, 157 in Ethiopia, 189 in Indonesia. In fact, the jet was nowhere near to stall speed, and for the rest of what was only an 11-minute flight, the pilots struggled to overcome the automated commands that continued to force down the nose. They lost that struggle, and the jet nosedived into the Java Sea. That's the Lion Air flight. At the heart of the concerns about the MAX 8 is a change in the automatic flight controls. The Ethiopian 737 was in the air for less time, around 6 minutes. At the heart of the concerns about the MAX 8 is a change in the automatic flight controls. Boeing is facing a lawsuit on behalf of the family of a victim of the Lion Air crash that focuses on changes made to the flight controls in a few lines of new software. The change, called Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, initiates the nosedive command without input from the pilots. The introduction of this system was not included in the flight manuals issued to pilots, nor was it included in the training given to pilots who transferred to the MAX 8 series from the earlier model 737s. Hervé Gogo tweeted, "China grounds entire domestic fleet of Boeing 737 MAX jets after crash. The Huawei versus Boeing bargain and the trade war," and he was quite correct. I hope that all the souls of the departed rest in peace. President Trump's advisor, Ambassador Bolton, warns of Huawei's Manchurian Ships. Manchurian Ships in Huawei technology could be activated for espionage. It really is far greater in magnitude than any other foreign effort we have seen in history to influence American opinion. And it's not just confined to the United States, he said to Fox News. People sometimes call the concern the Manchurian chip problem, that if something gets into the telecommunications system, that can be activated down the road. And then he said about China's island building in the South China Sea was in effect attempting to create a new Chinese province. It is taking over these rocks and shoals and islands and building military bases on them, Bolton said. It is completely unacceptable. That is why we have continued to do freedom of navigation exercises and look at other ways to stop this effort, in effect to create a new Chinese province. Take you back to an article I wrote on the 10th of December calling it Truce Dinner in Huawei. And I was saying that Trump and Xi enjoyed a truce dinner at the G20 in Buenos Aires, where dinner guests broke out into spontaneous applause thereafter. At the same time, Canadian authorities were making the arrest of Wan Zhu Meng, the CFO of Huawei, at the request of US authorities, and that the US is seeking extradition of her after convincing Canada to arrest her. And then a gentleman called Dennis Wilder says this is sending a signal that there is a new game. 15th of October, I was writing about war is coming, and I was citing the incident with the USS Decatur when a Chinese vessel nearly crashed with it or came within 45 yards, and I was saying surely that's a precursor. And I think essentially that's, that the US is taking a much more coercive approach to this Chinese island expansion. Canada, of course, was told it would face grave consequences if it does not immediately release Meng Wanzhou. And this takes me back to that Chicky run. I imagined that Trump and Xi were both racing stolen cars towards the edge of a cliff, and the first to eject out of his car is likely to be branded a Chicky. So we have Boeing, Huawei, we have Chinese trade data in the background, and indeed we can ask tariff wars, who's going to blink first? I also said in that article in December, the Vancouver real estate market, which has boomed for decades on the back of Chinese demand, looks horribly exposed, I said, and that the temptation to mug the handsome Justin Trudeau is something the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia could not resist, and it seems Xi is experiencing the same impulse. I now learned from the Vancouver Star that there is a new registry, and the public will soon find out any owners of multi-million-dollar properties in Vancouver that have been able to remain anonymous. Interesting point made by Jacob Parker that the abrupt end to the North Korea summit spooked the Chinese. A Malaysian court on Monday freed an Indonesian woman who was accused of assassinating the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's half-brother after prosecutors withdrew the murder charge against her. According to Andrew Rosati, this is the first time in 4 days Caracas is lighting up at night, as large sections of the city have regained power, at least temporarily. Much of Venezuela was plunged in darkness for 4 days. President Maduro blasted the outage as an electrical war directed by the United States. He called the blackout an act of sabotage at the Juri hydroelectric dam. As I've said previously, I think Maduro is going down just like Muammar went down, and as did Saddam. I quoted Venezuela as being at the edge. There is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. And I said in that article, access to oil defined 20th century empires, and the petrodollar was the key to the ascendancy of the United States as the world's sole superpower. America's war machine runs on, is funded by, and exists in protection of oil. Threats by any nation to undermine the petrodollar system are viewed by Washington as tantamount to a declaration of war against the United States of America. The Chavez Revolution was always a rebellion in the superpower's backyard, and the machine was eventually going to bring it to heel by hook or by crook. And then in August, I was writing about how Trump was relishing his financial warfare strategies. At that time, he was attacking Maduro with a remote-controlled drone. Now you have this electric sabotage.